Alaska native defeats Sarah Palin to win a House seat for Democrats. Biden seeks to galvanize U.S. gun violence action ahead of midterms. Waraich fund to assist Muslim nonprofits in donor relations. 3 million children at risk as devastating floods hit Pakistan. Afghanistan marks first anniversary of foreign troops withdrawal. Islamophobic Hindus lead successful boycott of top Indian film star Aamir Khan. From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. Our top story tonight. Democrat Mary Peltola has won the special election to fill Alaska's House seat for the remainder of 2022. Peltola's victory thwarted former Governor Sarah Palin's bid at a political comeback. The former state lawmaker will flip the seat held for nearly half a century by the late GOP Representative Don Young. Peltola is the first Alaska native in Congress. The state's Division of Elections tabulated ballots in the state's first use of the ranked choice system. On Tuesday, President Joe Biden said that he's determined to ban assault weapons to address the U.S. gun violence epidemic. Biden said the U.S. has to act for all those kids gunned down on our streets every single day that never make the news. Biden referred to his time in the Senate when lawmakers outlawed the guns for a decade beginning in 1994. He stressed it's not about taking away anybody's guns. He said he's not opposed to firearms or constitutional protection to own guns. But he emphasized that there are limits to the Second Amendment, including on what types of weapons are legal to possess. Former President Donald Trump accused FBI agents of confiscating his passports while executing the search of his Mar-a-Lago resort in Palm Beach, Florida, last month. Trump posted on Truth Social 2 weeks ago, calling it an assault on political opponent at a level never seen before in our country. Justice Department officials have returned his passports. As part of a legal filing late Tuesday night, attorneys for the government explained the passports were seized for a valid reason that incriminates Trump, Newsweek reports. The Justice Department said that the seized passports were in a desk drawer in Trump's office, which also included classified documents. The seizure was within the scope of the search warrant and relevant to the investigation, the department said. A 43-year-old woman faces hate crime charges for allegedly attacking a young woman wearing a hijab and calling her a terrorist, authorities said in California last month. On Tuesday, the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office announced hate crime and battery charges against Atosa Biglari. Authorities said on July 1st, an 18-year-old woman was walking by herself when Biglari began screaming at her. She allegedly approached the young woman, grabbed her headscarf, and began pulling at it. The district attorney described Biglari as a transient. She faces more than a year in prison if found guilty. Biglari is also facing charges related to a June 24th incident in which she allegedly threatened a woman with a pair of scissors. Muslim-led nonprofits are coming together to address common problems in their communities. The Community Collaboration Initiative brings together 22 Muslim American nonprofits, mostly in the Chicago area. A 2017 survey conducted by Dilnaz Waraich and the Waraich Family Fund found 3 key barriers to the success of Muslim-led nonprofits. These nonprofits will have an opportunity to better work on donor stewardships, holding on to donors, relationship maintenance, and highly segmented organizations. They'll also have an opportunity to work towards intentional collaborations with their peers. Waraich has partnered with Indiana University's Lilly School of Philanthropy to create the initiative to close gaps amongst Muslim-led organizations. The inaugural class of 22 nonprofits will be offered $1.5 million to share. On Tuesday, the U.S. military said that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, attempted to seize an unmanned naval vessel operating in the Persian Gulf. General Michael Kurilla, commander of the U.S. Central Command, said that the professionalism and competence of the USS Thunderbolt crew prevented Iran from this illegal action. Kurilla said that the incident demonstrates Iran's continued destabilizing, illegal, and unprofessional activity in the Middle East. The Navy said IRGC's support ship attempted to capture an unmanned surface vessel operated by the U.S. Fifth Fleet between Monday and Tuesday. Around 11 p.m. local time, the Navy detected the support ship Shahid Bazia towing a Saladrone Explorer unmanned surface vessel with the intent of detaining it. The Thunderbolt immediately responded, and the Fifth Fleet launched an MH-60S Seahawk from Bahrain to support the patrol ship. Bangladesh accused Burma's military of firing into its territory from a gunship helicopter Wednesday. No damage or casualties were reported. The Bangladeshi government has been raising the issue of shelling by its neighbor for several days. On Monday, the foreign ministry summoned Burma's ambassador in the capital city, Dhaka. 2 unexploded mortar shells purportedly launched from Burma fell inside Bangladesh's territory on Sunday. A Burmese military helicopter fired in a hilly forest in no man's land, AK Jahangir Aziz, a local government chairman and resident of the eastern border district of Bandarban, said. Fires from Burmese military helicopters have damaged his border garden many times, he told Anadolu agency. Afghanistan marked the first anniversary of foreign troops' withdrawal. Details after the break. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today.
I am what hunger looks like in America.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Assalamu alaikum! Open up your eyes.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever-popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe, and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
It's Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
To stop this genocide, we need your help.
On Wednesday, Afghanistan marked the first anniversary of U.S. troop withdrawal after a 20-year conflict between foreign forces and the Taliban. The ceremony was held at Bagram Air Base, the biggest former U.S. military station in the country during the 20-year occupation. Acting Prime Minister Mullah Muhammad Hassan Akhund and other top officials of the interim Taliban government attended the event. The ceremony was broadcast live on the state-run radio television Milli. It began with the Guard of Honor presented to the acting premier as Afghan Taliban army helicopters buzzed overhead. Several rallies were also held in different provinces nationwide, where Taliban supporters celebrated their return to power. The Taliban declared Wednesday a national holiday. UNICEF warns that more than 3 million Pakistani children are in need of humanitarian assistance and at increased risk of waterborne diseases, drowning, and malnutrition. That's due to the most severe flooding in that nation's recent history since June. A total of 33 million people, including about 16 million children, have been affected by heavy monsoon rains. More than 287,000 houses have been fully destroyed and 662,000 partially damaged. Some major rivers have breached their banks and dams overflowed. In their wake, they have destroyed homes, farms, and critical infrastructure, including roads, bridges, schools, hospitals, and public health facilities. 500,000 Nigerians have been affected by floods caused by heavy rain since January, President Muhammadu Buhari said Tuesday. 23 of 36 states in Africa's most populous country are affected by seasonal flooding. The northeastern states have been hit particularly hard this year. Buhari's officials said emergency services were providing aid and he was receiving regular updates on the floods. The floods have displaced over 73,000 people, caused more than 100 casualties, and injured about 270 people, Buhari said. People displaced by the conflict in Maiduguri, the regional capital of northeast Borno state, have seen their farms and homes destroyed by flooding. The region has been the epicenter of the country's more than decade-long insurgency. Pakistan has become the ground zero of global warming as a tsunami of floodwaters are drowning the country. Our prayers are with Pakistan. Here's a report by Saleha Farooq.
1/3 of Pakistan is now underwater. A national emergency has been declared. Pakistan's lush green valleys are being wiped out by rushing water. Water is everywhere, rushing down from the 5 of the world's tallest mountains in the north to the plains. Here is a scene from Sawat, Pakistan before the flood. Here's how it looks now. Here is a satellite image of Rajanpur, Pakistan before. Here's the one after the flood. All crop is underwater. Reports say farmers have lost 90% of the nation's crops, creating fear of food shortages. The government says that 800,000 livestock have perished as well. About 1,300 people have died, but the number of casualties might go up as communication systems are restored. Electricity, internet, and the phone service are out in many parts of Pakistan. At least 500,000 homes have been damaged, crumbled, or simply washed away. Pakistanis are rising together to help each other. People are rescuing each other. Heroes are also emerging. A career civil servant is being credited for saving a city. Loudspeakers on mosques are being used as an early warning system where no other warning system exists. This Pakistani risked his life to rescue this lucky cat. Pakistan has gotten 300% more rain in 2 months than it gets in a year.
The water levels here are still pretty high. It's up to my knees. I'm told that further down the road it's up to your neck, but it's down significantly from what it was. You can see the mark along the wall of this building. That shows what the high point was.
More rains are in the forecast, and Pakistan's glaciers, which feed its rivers, are also melting as well under record heat. USA Today says that Pakistan is ground zero for global warming consequences. Pakistan contributes to less than 1% of the world's greenhouse gases blamed for causing global warming. yet its 200 million people are among the world's most vulnerable victims of the growing consequences of climate change. It is not just Pakistan facing the climate-connected extreme disasters. From Africa to China, from Europe to America, signs of climate change are all over. Here are plush green lawns, nicely cut front yards, a symbol of prosperity and a pride of America. But now in California, cities are paying citizens to rip up their lawns. Yes, eliminating grass itself, not just the creeping Charlie. All to preserve water. California Governor Newsom has proclaimed a drought state of emergency. Here in Texas, ranchers are forced to sell their cattle since there is not much water. Pakistanis are, however, wondering if they will be left alone to deal with a monster they did not create, the monster of climate change. Climate change treats our Earth as one. Will humanity treat itself as one? This is Salha Farouk from Toronto Studios for Muslim Network TV.
Bollywood superstar Aamir Khan's latest film, Lal Singh Chadda, has flopped at the box office amid a boycott campaign by right-wing groups. The film stars Khan and was directed by Advait Chandan. In early August, Khan made a public declaration of love for India. His message was designed to counter a virtual campaign being waged against him and his latest film production, a remake of the Hollywood classic Forrest Gump. Khan said, "I wanted to assure everyone, I really love my country, so please don't boycott my films." His statement came after Boycott Lal Singh Chadda had been trending on Twitter for weeks. The boycott was orchestrated by predominantly upper caste Hindus posting tweets, videos, and messages, many of them blatantly Islamophobic. Those messages were amplified by thousands of anonymous handles, mostly aligned with the ruling right-wing Bharatiya Janata Party. Secret dealings which led to the end of the British Empire in the Middle East have been brought to light in a joint BBC News Arabic and Persian documentary. Secrets and Deals: How Britain Left the Gulf contains details of how it gave Iran control of contested islands. It also shares eyewitness accounts of a British organized coup. The winter of 1967 and 68 was a time of crisis for the British economy. Many Arab leaders were convinced Britain had secretly helped Israel to victory over its Arab neighbors in the Six-Day War of June 1967. Israel had captured East Jerusalem, the West Bank, Gaza, and the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. In retaliation, the oil-rich Gulf states began selling off their holdings of the British currency. As a result, the pound crashed. Desperate to save money, Harold Wilson's Labour government decided it was time to terminate Britain's imperial defense commitments in the Middle East. Britain never officially had colonies in the Gulf, but it had been the preeminent foreign power there since the 18th century. This meant Britain controlled Gulf countries' defense and foreign policies, while local leaders mostly oversaw their own affairs. In 1965, the most politically, socially, and educationally progressive of the ruling sheikhs in these states was Saqr bin Sultan al-Qasimi of Sharjah, who fell foul of the British. He was removed in a British-sponsored coup d'etat and replaced by his cousin. Sheikh Saqr was exiled. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour, walk a mile in my shoes, Walk a mile in my shoes.
I am what hunger looks like in America.
I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September.
I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs, and that's still not enough to put food on the table. I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
I am what hunger looks like in America.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
Welcome back. More than 30 people are dead in violence in Iraq. To discuss the current situation in Iraq, let's go to Edward Ahmed Mitchell. Over to you, Edward.
Thank you, Hena. And now we move to a discussion of the country of Iraq, and not just the politics of what's happening there, the political conflict, the violence there. We want to hear about what's happening with the average people on the ground, the people you don't hear about. What are they going through right now? What are they experiencing? And how can what they are experiencing be explained by looking to history, including the history of imperialism in that nation? So we want to learn a little bit about what's happening on the ground, learn something new today, and have that discussion. I'm very happy to welcome on our guest, Professor Callie Rubaii. Many of you may have heard of her work. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Anthropology at Purdue University. She is interested in sharpening resistance strategies that target the vulnerable nexus between coercive power and the physical world. Now, that's over my head. I'm a mere lawyer, and this sounds very deep. So we're going to learn a bit more about what the professor works on, how it's impacting people on the ground, and we're very happy to have that discussion. Professor, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well.
Good. So first, tell us a bit about yourself and your area of focus, your academic focus, what I just described. Just give us a little brief education about yourself and your area of focus, and then we'll dive into the discussion about what is happening on the ground in Iraq and the work you're doing there.
Sure. A lot of people define politics as what happens between politicians, but of course, the politics of everyday life happen in the material world. So that's what that description that you recited means, that oftentimes what makes life political, or how we understand politics actually affecting individual people's lives, is through our material circumstances. So that's my area of focus, and especially understanding the way that the country of Iraq has been spatialized in new ways, right? Divisions and neighborhoods and whole regions of the country, and then also ways that people have been displaced and moved around and understand their place in the world. So my most recent research project was spending almost a year in Fallujah. I recently returned, working with a team of epidemiologists and doctors and families and environmental activists who are really worried about what has been an ongoing multi-decade epidemic of birth defects that people are associating with violence from warfare. Mostly after the US occupation, after around 2004, doctors started noticing more and more health problems, especially with children who were born with different kind of congenital anomalies. And they started calling for help, trying to figure out what was going on. And this particular phenomenon has become a symbol of all of the other forms of long-term intergenerational violence that imperial wars have brought to people. And a child born with visible distortions to their body epitomizes how Iraq has been in many ways dismembered by imperial war. And so I'm really tracing both the social phenomenon and how people understand the meaning of birth defects as a symbol, and then also what is actually going on, taking soil samples and interviewing families and trying to understand the biomedical effects of the environment on their health.
That's fascinating, Professor. And I understand you were actually in Iraq for well over a year doing some of this work and research. Can you tell us more about what you found while you were on the ground there?
Sure. One thing I think that's really striking is that northern Iraq is really different from Baghdad or further south, and really different from Anbar province. So, for example, a lot of people who are focused on Baghdad-centered politics experience Fallujah and Ramadi as undergoing this incredible reform, and that life must be well improved. And while certain things do reflect that, there's a new road, there are new shopping malls, everyday life for people hasn't much improved over the last 10 or 20 years. The water that I was drinking was still brown. You have to buy water because the water treatment system is not effective. Similarly, the electricity, unless you have your own generator to burn fuel and produce private sources of energy, there's only public electricity a few hours a day. Things haven't really changed in the daily grind of life for people who are living in Anbar province, even as they've changed dramatically in different parts of Iraq.
Well, that's disturbing and sad to hear, but I guess sadly, not surprising to hear. So, in your research and you're looking at what's happening on the ground there, you're connecting this to history, to imperialism. Can you tell us a bit about the history of what Iraqis have experienced in terms of imperialism? We obviously know about the second Gulf War, the first one, but also, colonization. We could go back decades, even perhaps centuries, talking about what the people of that region endured. Can you tell us about a bit of the history there and what after effects you're seeing on the ground, Fallujah and the birth defects and all that, but anything else you want that is important to note?
Sure. On the one hand, we can look at this from the Iraqi perspective, and on the other, we could look at it from, for example, an American perspective. So we can do both. From the ground in Iraq, the phases of military occupation and invasion from outside others, whoever those might be, whether they're neighboring countries or, the British, this has been part of Iraq's history, and Iraqi people are familiar with various occupiers. When I was there in 2014, and ISIS was really dominant in people's lives, people were talking about, I really wish it were, Saddam back in power, or I wish it were the Americans back in power. Like, people are pretty good at comparing qualities of occupations because they're so familiar with a long enduring history of foreign occupation and are actually able to compare notes on who did it better. And that's not meant to be humorous or ironic as often as it came across that way. People actually are finding that their quality of life is deeply impacted by who is dominating them. The idea of total liberation or really autonomy with actual emancipation built into it has eluded Iraqi independence for a long time. I think a lot of people that I talk to now in the 2020s are feeling really disillusioned. Yes, there are elections. Yes, Iraq supposedly has some degree of autonomy, and yet so much corruption and so much outside influence has continued to set the priorities and the policies that impact people's daily lives. When it comes to actually getting medication, for example, I'm in hospitals all the time. It was under sanctions that doctors had to watch children suffocate to death because they didn't have inhalers. How much has really changed if now, under a different regime and with different political influences, inhalers are still not reaching hospitals because of supply chain disruption? In the end, the material life of people hasn't changed much or hasn't improved much, in spite of claims that Iraq has seen greater democratization, which in material practice is not necessarily the case.
Now, Professor, I know you really study the people and you don't get in necessarily the politics of it. So let me ask you, just looking at what you've seen from the people, the trajectory, if you were to go back to Iraq, a year from now or even 5 years from now, do you have any expectations about where people will be? Is this just dependent on who's running the country and that's going to greatly decide, what their life experience is like? Are you seeing any trends that can kind of give you some insight into where things are going on the ground there for the people in the future?
It's a challenging question because whenever we make predictions about the future, we risk being wrong. But one thing that I think we can count on is that privatization, which was really it really strongly instigated after U.S. occupation with Paul Bremer's 100 orders of withdrawal, which have now been converted into different kinds of policy forms, have systematically privatized every sector of Iraq. And that means that private interest drives the train. And so I think we can continue seeing people need to buy their own air filters and their own water. We're going to continue seeing people being able to buy their way out of problems if they're able to, which will increase class discrepancy. And I think we're going to continue seeing that happen more and more all over the world because, of course, what's happening in Iraq is happening all over the world. Imperial projects often seek to privatize and extract resources from countries and never actually invest in the infrastructure that's necessary for sustaining healthy public life.
So a final question, Professor, where does your work go from here? What are some of the next stages that you're planning to pursue in terms of your study, your focus, your research gathering? And how, if someone's hearing this information, how could they potentially operationalize this? What I mean by taking the information you're sharing and saying, all right, as a policymaker, as a journalist, as a whatever, how can I address some of the problems that your research is identifying?
Sure. I mean, one really simple example. The U.S. just passed the PACT Act a few weeks ago. And the PACT Act extends medical care to veterans who were exposed to burn pits, which burned massive amounts of waste 24/7 for over a decade when the U.S. was occupying Iraq. Of course, Iraqi people have been excluded from the PACT Act. They weren't part of a campaign to extend medical care to those who were affected by U.S. imperialism. There are people who are pushing to try and extend the allocation of resources that U.S. veterans receive to Iraqi civilians who are also facing the toxic legacy of U.S. occupation. That's part of what my research seeks to contribute to. Right now, the effort in my case is to really systematically demonstrate what epidemiological and GPS evidence we can pull together to show how military environmental effects have shaped individual people's health in order to support a campaign for the extension of those benefits. I run a nonprofit, reparations.org. A lot of energy has gone into actual advocacy in individual cases. Now we're shifting a little bit to focusing on research and advocacy as the U.S. approaches its 20th anniversary of having invaded Iraq. And I think the U.S. public is actually ready to have a conversation about what is owed to Iraqi people for this tremendous and ongoing devastation of public life.
Absolutely. If I may opine, 20 years of suffering. I remember I was, 15 when we invaded Iraq, and I was 15-year-old, and I knew it was a bad idea, and I knew it was an unjust war. And it's sad to see that we've been proven so very true and that other people had to suffer as a result of that. mistake over the past 20 years, not to mention what happened before that as a result of various governments. So, Professor, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insight and telling us about your work on the ground. And we look forward to having you back to get some updates on what you're doing and what you're learning, and how people are hopefully operationalizing the information that you're gathering. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll send it back to you, Hena.
Thank you so much for that update on Iraq, Edward. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. And if you're in Chicago, do visit our booth at the ISNA convention. Assalamu alaikum and good night.